Assassins have long made for interesting fodder in Hollywood movies. Cool, clinical, lethal, and morally grey, they were much more sophisticated, complex, and precise than the big muscly ex-soldiers or CIA operatives that made up the bulk of action thrillers back in the day. The problem is that they were usually crammed awkwardly into the same one-man army mold as their predecessors, the detailed and methodical nature of their work washed away by a wave of big explosive shootouts, high-speed car chases, and brutal fistfights. That's pretty much what we've been conditioned to expect from assassination thrillers, which probably explains why a lot of people came away from The Killer feeling like they'd been cheated out of a kick-ass action movie. Slow-paced, introspective, and stripped back, with a relatively simple and linear storyline driven by lengthy monologues from Michael Fassbender's protagonist, it's definitely not a thrill-a-minute kind of movie because, well, it's not trying to be. But hear me out on this one, because if you go into it with the right expectations and pay attention to what the film's actually trying to show and tell you, The Killer is a pretty rewarding movie experience with way more depth and subtlety than people give it credit for. Allow me to elaborate. The film stars Fassbender as the Killer. He goes by many aliases in the course of the movie, most of them characters from old TV shows, but we never get to know his real name, just as we never get to know his true background and personal history, because those things are less important than what happens to him in the course of the story. The Killer, as his name suggests, works as a freelance assassin, a job he's been doing for a long time now and is extremely good at. The reason for his success is the mantra that he lives by religiously, a philosophy of total discipline and self-control, perfect attention to every detail, never allowing empathy, compassion, or morality to get in his way. As he explains in his opening monologue, he sees most of the world as being inferior to him, trapped by a system of rules, beliefs, and self-imposed limitations that only men like himself are able to ignore. That's why he's got no problem whatsoever killing people for money. Anyway, when we pick up with him, he's staking out a hotel in Paris waiting for his target to show up. His preparations are lengthy and meticulous, and as the film stresses, his job often involves long periods of boredom and routine, followed by a few seconds of critical release. Unfortunately, when the moment comes, an unlucky mistake causes him to miss his target, forcing him to flee the scene. It's a career first for him. He's never failed a mission like this before, so he's basically in uncharted territory now. Returning to his hideout in the Dominican Republic, he finds the place ransacked and his girlfriend severely injured. As he soon discovers, a pair of hitmen were sent to his house to take him out and ran into her instead. It seems that his employers have turned their backs on him and they're determined to clean up the mess that he's made. From then on, his objective is simple: track down the people who came after him and work his way up the chain until he can find the man behind the whole thing, and hopefully leave a lot of dead bodies in his wake. As I said before, the tendency with Hollywood is to present assassins as glamorous and sexy, like James Bond but without the tuxedo. Trained killers walking unseen amongst us, always ready with a silenced pistol or a high-powered sniper rifle, travelling the world in search of their next target, unable to take down armies of henchmen standing in their way. But The Killer instead gives us a much more grounded, mundane view of these people and the work that they do. This is a world of economy air travel, bland hotels, anonymous storage lockups, and simple, practical technology. It's the exact opposite of hyper-stylized movies like the John Wick franchise that have come to dominate the genre in recent years. The tedium of staking out a target, waiting hours or even days for something to happen, staying constantly focused, constantly alert, constantly suspicious of everything, the minute details and decisions that can make the difference between success or failure, and most importantly of all, the kind of person who gravitates towards work like that. The Killer himself starts out as the stereotype of the perfect assassin, a man seemingly without emotion, conscience, or even a personality to speak of, whose only real motivation is completing the next mission. His work has already earned him more money than he could ever hope to spend, and yet he's never thought of retiring. The mantra he lives by has kept him stuck in an endless cycle that exists only to perpetuate itself, until his failed mission in Paris finally breaks it. The more the movie progresses, the more the icy shell around him begins to crack. He starts making mistakes, accidentally killing a prisoner that he's trying to interrogate, getting blindsided during a house assault, allowing emotions to cloud his judgment. All of these things point to the fallible man slowly emerging from behind the carefully constructed facade, a man beginning to question the choices that have set him on this path, and whether or not this is the life he even wants now. The film's core elements of alienation, dehumanization, urban decay, and socially outcast protagonist sits squarely within the David Fincher comfort zone of movies like The Game, Fight Club, and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. The movie also subverts another big trope of the genre, the idea of personal grudges. See, 9 times out of 10, the villain of movies like this will turn out to be some former friend or comrade that was once betrayed or turned against the hero somehow, adding a personal dimension to their rivalry. But there's really none of that here. The characters pitted against each other have no real connection or past history, they're all just people doing a job, none of them particularly better or worse than the other. Shit man, when the killer finally confronts the big bad guy who started the whole thing, the man doesn't even know who the fuck he is. The movie's directed in Fincher's typical subdued, economical style, which is very much in keeping with the tone of the script. There's no crazy extravagant cinematography, no heavy use of CGI to make death-defying stunts come to life. The one major fight scene in the entire movie is simple, brutal and grounded, like you're standing in the room with them. Performances are excellent across the boards. I've always been a fan of Michael Fassbender. Even when the guy's trapped in a shitty movie, he's usually able to elevate the material with the sheer force of his performance, and he carries the cool, clinical assassin character perfectly here. Tilda Swinton's practically made a career out of playing quirky, unusual characters, so she's right at home as a fellow assassin that's revealed to have a very human side. And yeah, she really does look like a Q-tip in this film. Charles Parnell, meanwhile, is one of those naturally charismatic actors that's able to make a lot out of very little, and again, the movie allows him to shine as a middleman who makes a living out of dealing with some of the most dangerous individuals on Earth. Ultimately, there's a lot to take from The Killer if you go into it with the right mindset. You actually pay attention to what's happening and allow it to unfold at its own pace. It's definitely not going to thrill you with explosive action scenes and quippy dialogue, but if, like me, you appreciate a mature film written for mature audiences, then I think you'll enjoy this movie a whole lot more than some people give it credit for. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.